How many of you ever heard that version of the Lord's Prayer before? Not even the choir, right? I haven't either, but it's very haunting, isn't it? So I'm going to do something. Can you hear me? She's looking so she can hear me. Following the communion service, rather than the last hymn, I'm going to leave and I'm going to ask the choir to re-sing that as a communion closer. Because it's the nature of the Lord's Prayer to really wrap everything together, and yet the haunting melody of that, I think, sends us forth with a sense of the power and of the presence of God in a unique way. And I think it would be a beautiful close to the communion, and personally I'd like to hear it one more time. So can we arrange that without some great good? Sorry, services never run quite the way they're planned. I'm sitting there nice, calm, and cool, and then Chris sings so beautifully, and my mind just soars, and I'm in a different world. I'm also glad to see you got all that off. That's nice. Lord, we got to move. It's going to be the shortest sermon you've heard from me yet. I appeal to you, brothers, and in today's world, and sisters, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that you may prove what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. As we continue on with the concept of the Lord's Prayer, thy will be done, I think we have to acknowledge that we could spend, and I intended to, a number of minutes talking about knowing the will of God, which is worth a subject all in itself. Let me just briefly say that I think pretty much we all know the will of God. It's not the will of knowing the will that's such a problem, it's doing it. Most of us, when we do something wrong, are well aware of the fact that we're doing something wrong, but we'd say we're going to do it anyhow. Most of us say, well, I really don't know what God wants me to do. We're avoiding the question. For the most part, we know. We just don't want to do it that way. And therefore, we throw it into a dilemma as though somehow or another we're really struggling with the question. I'm always reminded of my sister, who was a feisty little thing, 4 years younger than I, who one time says, I know if I do it, I'm going to get spanked. I know if I do it, I'm going to get spanked. I know if I do it, I'm going to get spanked. I'm going to do it anyhow. And she did it and got spanked. And most of us are very much like that. But we understand that if you really want to explore the will of God in a deeper meaning, you have to begin to understand prayer. You have to understand the reading and studying of good literature. You have to understand the importance of being in church and filling those spiritual balloons. You have to understand the importance of conversation and education. You have to understand that the number of people who talk about God have met God, a number of others don't even have the foggiest idea. And there are a few areas where people turn over to absolute incompetence, the concept of religion. A few areas more than religion accepts that. Somehow or another, every idea of God is supposed to be good, and there's no testing out, and yet we recognize that within the church, within the scriptures, within prayer, within music, within the society, within the workings, there is a way of knowing the will of God, and the next part becomes, how do you do the will of God? And the reason that we have problem with that is that most of us are not doers of the word, we are sayers only, to borrow the phrase of the book of James. But that's not only true in terms of religion. The challenge is that once you know what is right to be done, to go out and do it. The failure in much of business, the failure in much of education is that we have to understand the problem, and nobody ever moves us beyond that. We appoint a committee to study, but the committee studies and reports. Everybody accepts the report, and the report is put on the shelf, and nothing is done about it. And there isn't a single person sitting in this room who hasn't been frustrated at having taken seriously a task, studied it, come up with a proposal, whether it be in church or school or even the home or wherever it may be, and have everybody say, that's the greatest idea, send safety pins. However, nothing ever gets done. Am I right? Business failure. business meetings that go on and on and on and on and on that are a waste of everybody's time, filling the amount of time that's available so people can argue that they're really being busy, are precisely upon the fact that we do not know how to take the will and make it actually work. And in Christianity, we have an added problem to the normal lethargy of making things work. That is, we have accepted the idea that we are in the world but not part of the world. One of the things that the last few years of study and the last year and a half of study has done is to help me understand the Lord's Prayer from a Jewish perspective, because after all, Jesus was a Jew and the Lord's Prayer is a Jewish prayer. We don't think of it in that way. I was just reading over, because of a lecture I have to give next month on Martin Luther and the Jews, I was just reading through some of the evangelical materials that were published in Nazi Germany on the history of the Lutheran liturgy. And in that liturgy, there were a number of times when it was suggested that the Lord's Prayer be dropped from the Christian worship service because it was too Jewish. Now, one of the things that Judaism has as a basic core is that the world is incomplete and God is not going to complete the world except that we do it along with God. Judaism is infected by the world in the sense that it is struggling to bring about the perfection of the world under God, and recognizes that if each and every single individual who is involved does not only do what is required but reach out beyond, the world will deteriorate, and if their thing is done that is necessary to be done, the world will be transformed. I'm not saying that every Jew is perfect in that, or every Jew even attempts it, but that's the philosophy behind Judaism. So, you have to be involved in the world, not only in the religious world, but the world as a whole. That's why if you look down on the giving record, you will find that if you take a Christian family on the average who makes X thousand dollars and a Jewish family who makes X thousand dollars, the same family, the same size, same number of kids, same job, same house, same lifestyle, same kids going to college, same medical bills, same everything down, the Jewish family on the average will give 5 to 10 times as much to charitable causes as the Christian family. Given fact, whether you like it or not. Why? Because the feeling is that you've got to be involved in the world, and you give not only to your church or synagogue, but to the opera, because part of what you need to do is bring culture in the world, to the Art Institute, to Christians, to all those who have need. You reach out because part of your giving is transforming in the name of God the world. And you give of your time, and you give of your substance. Why? Because you recognize ultimately it's God's time and God's substance. And when I read, thy will, that I think we can understand. Be done is the real challenge. And every sermon I've ever heard preached on that theme has always dealt with knowing the will of God, and almost none ever touch the theme doing the will of God. But what happens after you know if you don't do? You know what the scriptures say in Ezekiel? That if you see somebody doing something wrong and you know it's wrong and you don't reach out and help to overcome that wrong, you are more guilty than the individual doing it, because presumably they don't know that it's wrong, but you knowing left undone. Do you want to be inoculated? Read the history of Christianity. It's not what goes on in this world, it's the world after. It's not what goes on in this world, it's the streets of gold in heaven. It's not what goes on in this world. It's possible to be and hold slaves. God's creation, as much in the South did and other parts of the world have done, and at the same time say to those slaves, but this is for now, but in the world that's to come, in Glory Land and Beulah Land, you're going to have a different world. And it's that kind of inability to understand that this is God's world. Thy kingdom come, thy reign come. That this is the place in which we have to operate. That this is where the will of God must be carried out. And that God will not do it unless each and every one of us pull together to do it. To transform, to bring a sense of the godly dimension into life. We have to do that by being involved. We have to do that by standing up and being counted. We have to do that by reaching ever more deeply into our pocketbooks and finding those things with which we have an affinity and with which we believe is important and supporting them. I read in an Esquire magazine of this character in Texas. They were doing lifestyles that had last year an income of nearly $400,000 and was proud of the fact that he had given $20,000 in gifts to friends. He had spent $40,000 on his American Express for eating out and dining, and that he had not given one single penny to charity. And I want to tell you, when I read that, I cried for the man. He is a ripoff. He is insecure. He has no ability to really meet people as they are. He can only use his financial charms to win friends and influence people without even having a sensitivity. What a crying shame that somebody with a salary of $400,000 cannot even reach into the depths of his pockets and help those who have need. To support those agencies and those things. And whatever he may know about the will of God, he's incapable of carrying it out. I cried for him. Tears literally rolled down. And I thought, what a false life. Not be able to give. To be in a position where you have to buy. Tragic. Thy will be done. Not by the other guy, Lord. Oh, I'd like it so much that the other guy would do it, Lord. Lord, don't grab me by the throat, Lord. It's somebody else's responsibility. And then comes that choking phrase right there. And the twisting as God tries to get a hold of your existence and say, there is nobody else, Jim. You're the only one I've got to do this. Then comes the real choice. Lord, I pray thy will be done. The Lord says,